You can hear me clearly and see my slides. Okay. So welcome back.
You're not audible. Sir, we are unable to hear you.
Sir, you're not audible.
Is it better now? Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, so what I am planning today is to talk about the optimization for deep learning and why optimization. There are many kinds of optimization in the literature. So, I will be primarily focusing on the particular kind of optimization that you need in order to build the deep learning models and train them. Okay. And the main theme of everything is basically the gradient descent based optimization. Okay, we deals with continuous functions, and because we will be dealing with the continuous functions in deep learning, and so you essentially apply the high school calculus, okay, the gradient things to find out the optimal values of these parameters and function of so on. So there are many kinds of algorithms based on gradient descent. So like stochastic gradient descent and also adaptive gradient descent things. So I will primarily be focusing on three things. First, the fundamental thing, which is stochastic gradient descent, followed by ADAGRAD, which is adaptive gradient descent, and ADAM, which is kind of very default optimization technique that everybody uses now in deep learning. So in any setup you see in deep learning, that you will see that people are actually using ADAM. So basically, I'm going to focus on three things today in today's lecture. Okay, but the common thread of everything is essentially the gradients. Okay, the derivatives of the functions and so on and so forth. So they are going to guide you how you should find out the good values of this minimum or maximum or whatever. Okay. All right. So with that note, just quickly run through the basic math, and you all know this, but just to quick recap. Okay, in case you forgotten some of the things. So the main thing is a differential calculus. We want to find out the maximum or minimum value. In this case, probably we'll most often we will be finding out the minimum value, but one can also take the function and then find the maximum value as well. There is as such no restriction. So you have a given as, for example, if you consider the simplest case, univariate function, you just have a function and it has to be continuous and differentiable function. And you basically at particular point, you simply compute the derivative. And at that particular point, the derivative, the sign of the derivative will tell that whether you can basically, in which direction you should move in order to find out the maximum or the minimum value. Okay. So if it is less than 0, function is decreasing. If it is greater than 0, function is increasing. And that's the essential, the main idea that you use. Okay. So this is for the univariate case. But in deep learning, because in modern deep learning models will contain like millions and millions of parameters, so we deal with the univariate function. So we have to deal with the multivariate function. Okay. So in that case, what we should do? So instead of like taking the full derivative, we can take the partial derivative, okay, of the functions in order to find out that which direction we should move, so that we can find out the good values of this, the minimum or maximum value, whatever. Okay. And as you know, in partial derivative, you simply, when you are taking partial derivative with respect to a particular variable, you simply keep other variable constant and simply apply the straight away simple rule that you typically apply. Okay, that's it. So Just a quick sort of the overview of local and global minima and all kinds of stuff. So when you are dealing with the univariate function, then we generally fit the curve. Okay, so a single variable function, and then you can see this picture. Then this is the global minima, this is the local minima, and so on and so forth. Why this is important? Because this is a non-convex optimization function. Okay, because there could be many local minima. Okay, so your optimization algorithm may get stuck to local minima. So as of now, there is no such algorithm which can guarantee global minima. Okay, so essentially, so that somehow you have to figure out that how we can basically improve the performance a little bit and so on and so forth. Okay, but as I pointed out, the today's deep learning models will contain billions, millions and millions of parameters. So essentially, it's a multivariate function. So what we really want to do, surface fitting. Okay, because this will involve lots of parameters. And on the right side, what you can see is basically a surface where you can see there are lots of peaks and this and that and so on and so forth. And you have to figure out a particular point where you want to get minimum value and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the basic thing. All right. So now let's move on to the nature of the functions that we will be dealing with. In this particular talk, in particular in deep learning, we won't be dealing with all kinds of functions. A particular kind of functions we'll be dealing with, because that's good enough to serve our purpose. So as I mentioned, in machine learning, often the objective function that we deal with often multivariate functions. So you have to assume that's the multivariate function we'll be dealing with. Okay. And the second thing is that the function must be continuous. Okay, if you really want to apply the gradient descent based optimization technique, the function must be continuous. Actually, it has to be differentiable. Okay, but you can still tweak a little bit. Even if the function is not differentiable, it is continuous, you can still manage to get things done. Okay, and you will see when I will talk about the deep learning basics, the models and so on, different kinds of activation functions, you get to know how we can handle these things. Okay, these are like minor changes that you can make in order to make things work actually. Okay, so yeah, so the continuity is basically good enough for a function to be eligible for gradient descent based optimization. Okay, so that's the kind of the nature of the function that we're dealing with. And again, I mentioned that we are dealing with a non-convex functions. That means there could be multiple local minima, not only one. So that is another problem. Okay, there are some solutions people proposed, but no solution actually guarantees that you are going to get the global minima out of all these things. Okay, so all right. Okay, so let's talk about the basic thing, gradient descent. And I request you to pay careful attention to this, because this is the kind of the most important building block for training deep learning. Okay, so like everything that you see in deep learning training essentially comes from the gradient descent based technique. Okay, so therefore it is important to understand the main motivation behind all this. Okay, all right. So let's basically, as the name suggests, so the gradient descent. So let's basically talk about gradient descent. So what's the objective? That so in any machine learning, okay, in particular in supervised machine learning, your goal is to minimize the objective function or maximize the objective function. Okay, if it is an error function, you want to minimize it. If this is a performance or a profit function or something, then you want to maximize it. But anyway, you want to basically optimize the function, and the objective function will have a number of parameters. Okay, if you recall your SVM stuff, okay, the SVM model. If you recall, for instance, your logistic regression, okay, and all kinds of stuff. If you think about your linear regression and all, you can see that every function will involve a number of parameters. This is called model parameters. Okay, and one of the main goals in machine learning is to figure out the good values of these parameters from the training data. You use the training data to find out the good values of the parameter, and for that we need to define an objective function which we want to optimize, okay, in order to find out the good values of these parameters. That's what we want to do. So here I have shown a small error objective function. Okay, think about it. For example, so I have the data something like on the right side. You can see that training data will have the input and the output. Input is basically the input feature vector, and output is basically the label. Okay, or the regression values or whatever that you can think of. Okay. And here the f, the function f is my machine learning model. It's nothing but a mathematical equation. In models in machine learning often means, pretty often means the mathematical equation actually, mathematical function. Okay. And so the function will take some input value. So f x of I is basically taking a variable called input variable xi. So f is xi is giving something, which is called the predicted value, and yi is basically the gold standard value. Okay, so you have to adjust the parameters in such a way that you want to minimize this error. So error is basically a total error defined over all the samples that you have. So all you want to do, we have to minimize this value of e. So for what values of this model parameters, I can have this thing. Okay. So two things you have to keep in mind. One is, of course, the minimum value is required in order to know that how my training is actually evolving over time. And the second thing is basically you need to know the actual values of these parameters, because when you test it on new data, then you need to know the actual values of the parameters. So two things you simultaneously need to know. Okay. So that's what we really want to do. Okay. And our objective would be to optimize E. In this case, it's an error function. So I want to minimize E with respect to the model parameters. And there I want to apply the gradient descent technique. That's it, what I do. Okay. And as you can see, this is a continuous function. No problem at all. So, all right. So now let's just do a little bit of very simple question answering stuff in order to understand the main equation behind gradient descent. Okay. So I'm showing a very simple curve. You can see here only one minima. Okay. So this is kind of convex curve, but you know that is applied to all kinds of stuff as well. Okay. So think about it that this is the function that I have, and for simplicity, I have taken the univariate function. Okay, just to show you how things actually work. So in this case, that this is single parameter model parameter is called theta, and your function is basically f theta, which is your objective function or error function or whatever that you can think about. Okay. And as you know that you want to really reach this particular point, the black spot. Okay, the black spot is the point where you want to reach. That's their ultimate goal. And the question is, how can I reach there? Okay. So the standard practice is that you can start from somewhere on the curve. You can randomly choose a position in the curve on the curve, and then you start from there. Okay, so you have to initialize somewhere, right? You have to start from somewhere. So you basically start from a random point and then basically move on. So let's assume that the red spot is my starting point. I randomly chosen this point. Okay, anybody can choose it. So you could have chosen this particular point on the left side of this curve. That's not a problem at all. Okay. So just assume that the red spot is your starting point. Okay, and you basically start from there, and let's see how we can actually find out that one. So I'm showing set of questions and answers in order to understand the basic equation, how the equation actually came in the very first place. Okay, so the question is, if we start from the red circle, what is the direction of movement? Okay, that's the first question that I have to answer. So my answer would be that I have to basically move downward. Okay, from this I can see it's downward movement. Now the question is, that's all right, I can visually see it, but then how do I know that? Okay, mathematically. Okay, how can I get the direction? So I simply look at this derivative, in particular the sign of the derivative. Okay, and if I look at the derivative of that particular function at that particular point, red point, then I get to know that whether I have to basically go downward or upward. That's it. Okay. So what's the sign of the derivative here? If you do a little bit of thing here, so it is basically positive. Okay, it's saying the sign is positive. That means the function is increasing. Okay. So therefore, then which direction I have to move? Because my objective is to minimize this function. Okay. So then basically I have to move in the opposite direction of that, because it's an increasing function. So if you simply follow that particular direction, same direction, you are going to increase it further. So you have to always move to the opposite direction of that. Okay. So then, knowing that at particular point I know which direction I should move, then how should I change my parameter? Because that's my initial point. Now I have to change my point a little bit so that I can basically find out the minimum value here. So I can change the parameter. So simple equation is this, that the new value which I am going to compute in the next step is equals to the old value minus R, which is a constant, and I will describe the roles of R in a moment, but it's a constant, positive constant, into the derivative. Okay. Now if you carefully look at it, that the old value minus R into derivative. So then the R is positive constant, Okay, and the derivative is essentially telling you that which direction you should move. There is a little bit of magnitude as well. Okay, how steep the function is and so on and so forth. But the primary purpose is to know that which direction I should move. Okay, and the R is basically is called a rate constant, and R is telling you here is that how much jump. Okay, the magnitude of jump that you want to make. Now that I started from position R, rate point, now I know which direction I should move. And the question is how much I should move. Is it 1 meter, 10 meter, 15 meter, or how much meter I should move? So that will be primarily determined by the constant called R, which is called the rate constant. Okay. So if you set the value of R to be very large, you are basically, descending as very high rate and so on and so forth. And there are consequences of all these things, which you will see in a moment. I will show, okay, what are the consequences and so on and so forth. Okay. So this equation, the simple equation, is key to almost all kinds of optimization that you see in deep learning. Okay, it's a simple equation. Okay, this is for univariate function. So when you do multivariate function, you simply replace this derivative with the partial derivative. That's it. Okay, there is nothing special in it. Okay, so all we really want to do, we want to apply this function. Now, there are a few changes that you may need in order to find out few other complicated stuff, which I will gradually tell you later on in the lecture when I talk about AdaGrad and Adam and so on and so forth. But that's the fundamental idea which you use everywhere. Okay. All right. Any question you have up to this point? Okay. All right. So then let's just do a quick demo. Okay, now if you look at this equation carefully, here in this particular case, the main equation, that theta t plus 1, theta is the model parameter which you really want to find out so that you get the optimal value of the function. Theta t plus 1 is basically the value at t plus 1th iteration, because this is an iterative process. You are updating these values right from the starting position. Okay, so and theta t is basically the value in the previous iteration. Okay, and so on and so forth. So this is an iterative process. Okay, so say your starting position is here. Okay, now that you compute the del f, del theta, and so on and so forth, and you apply this thing, and so basically your after the first update, you stand somewhere here. Okay. Now again, you basically make another update, you stand somewhere here. Okay, and so on and so forth. So you can see gradually that more update that you make, you are going to get closer to the global minima or the desirable point that you are targeting here. Okay, so this is from the right side of this curve. Okay, now what happens, for example, because I have mentioned that the initial position should be randomly chosen. Okay, now it could be on the left side of this curve rather than the right side of this curve. Okay, that might happen because you are choosing randomly. So if that happens, for example, so say accidentally you ended up choosing the initial point on the left side of this curve, for example, this one. Okay, again, if you compute the derivative at this particular point, the sign of this derivative in this particular point will be negative because the function is actually decreasing. So then if you look at the equation, then you're actually moving towards right side. Okay, so you basically after the first update you reach here, after the second update you reach here, after the third update you reach here, and so on and so forth. So more update that you make, you are going to get closer to the desirable point that you are targeting, which is the black spot. Okay, that's your final target. Okay, so that's the essential idea behind the main idea behind gradient descent algorithm. Of course, this is an univariate function. So when you do multivariate function, then you simply replace this whole thing with the partial derivatives. Okay, with all this stuff and so on and so forth. All right. So, okay, so now that let's basically look at the actual function, and I start with the simplest function, which is linear regression function. Okay, there are n features in the data. Okay, and so I want to do kind of linear regression stuff over it. So you can see the linear regression function. Okay, here involving n plus 1 parameters. So theta 0, theta 1, and up to theta n are the model parameters, coefficients, and all. Okay, and I really want to apply the gradient descent stuff to find out the good values of these thetas, because if I know that all the theta values, I'm basically done. I know my model. Okay, and I can apply for future data. Okay. So again, for this, I am defining the error function. Okay, it's kind of squared error, that the difference between the predicted values and the gold standard value, and I want to minimize that essentially. Okay. Now, because I have there are n+1 parameters, so my error function will have n+1 basically variables which I need to optimize. Okay. All right. So now we have to move from the total differentiation to partial differentiation, because now we are dealing with lots of variables. Now, if you look at the equation at the bottom of the slide, okay, it remains the same exactly. Only thing is that we are doing partial derivative as compared to the total derivative that we have been doing earlier, because we had a univariate function, and that's it and nothing else. All right. Now, taking this particular function, what we can do is that, say, we want to apply the gradient descent algorithm. So let's see how we can do this thing. So the idea is, again, that first step in any gradient descent is that you randomly select or set the values of these parameters. The initial point has to be random. So if you have 10 parameters, you randomly choose all these values of these parameters, okay, randomly. And then you basically, the iterative steps come into picture. Okay, you simply repeat these iterative steps, okay, until you basically reach to a point when you feel you are satisfied. Okay, so the iterative step that we apply for all model parameters, you can apply this same equation that you have seen before. Okay, the same theta nu is equals to theta old minus r into partial derivative of that particular function with respect to the particular parameter, and so on and so forth. Okay, and basically you are done. And that's the essential steps in, like, the main steps in gradient descent algorithm. So now the only thing that we need to address is basically when to stop. Okay, people call convergence and so on and so forth, but essentially when to stop it. So broadly, there are two possible approaches that people actually apply. Okay, one is basically you can iterate a fixed number of times. Okay, 100, 200, 300, whatever, or you can see how your objective function value is actually changing. Okay, if you see that the objective function value is not changing much, very close to each other, then you can probably see that you can reach either local minima, global minima, whatever. So you can stop. Okay, so broadly, these two ways you can basically do it. Okay, so that's basically the main gradient descent algorithm. Okay, on multivariate function, like be it univariate or multivariate, whatever. Now, next is that what is the trouble with the batch gradient descent? Now, if you look at this equation carefully, so in particular this equation, so here the error function is defined over all the samples that you had in your training data. Okay, this is called total error. Okay, it took into consideration all the samples, total error over all the samples. Okay, all right. Now let's see how the standard gradient descent can create trouble for you. Okay, all right. So I go to the next slide. Okay, all right. So now here my error function again is this. Okay, you can see the total error function. And here the function that I really want to figure out, the linear regression function, is this theta 0 plus theta 1x and so on and so forth. So if I want to apply the gradient descent on theta 0, for example, I have to find out good values of theta 0. I have to apply the partial derivative. So if you simply apply partial derivative, you are going to get something like this. It's a very straightforward thing. Okay, you can do it like with pen and paper and so on and so forth. Okay, so del E del theta 0 looks something like this. Okay, from this. Now I have to do this for all the parameters that the model has. So if I do this for theta 1, then I am going to get something like this. It's just coming straight away from the function et. Okay, you can simply do it just like high school calculus and so on. Okay, so del et del theta 1 looks something like this. Okay. Then, so in general, if you want to basically apply this thing on all these parameters and so on and so forth. So if I want to figure out the general rule, so del et del theta j, okay, for any parameter, I can get something like this. Okay, so it's basically an expression which I can get, and this basically expression I have to use in order to apply the gradient descent based algorithm. All right. So far so good. This is like very trivial things. Okay, not much a problem. So, but there is a problem. Okay, what's the problem? So if you look at the update rule looks something like this, that new theta j is equals to old theta j minus r into this gradient stuff. Okay, And this you have to compute for all parameters in this model, because if there are 10 parameters, you will have 10 update rules, okay, for each parameter and so on and so forth. And you have to update it for many, many times, okay, until unless you are satisfied. So what's the problem with this one? If you look at this, the main issue in this case, when you are playing with the total error involving all the samples in a data, okay, so you have to, for each parameter update, you need to process all training samples. And in today's like applications, okay, in any kind of things that you see, there are typically like billions and millions of examples and training samples that you deal with, okay, it's typically very high. And so every example will have like thousands and thousands of parameters, features, okay. So you can very easily imagine, so for a single update, what is the cost of computation? Okay, it's very, very expensive. So in general, if there are k parameters and n training samples, for every update, okay, we need to have k into n processing, which is extremely costly when you are dealing with large volume of data. We simply cannot afford it, even with GPUs and all kinds of stuff. Okay, think about a test sample with like 1 million image with say some megapixel of image and so on and so forth. It's very, very difficult to do that. Computationally very, very costly. Okay, well, that's the biggest problem with the batch gradient descent, when your direction of movement depends on all samples in your training data. Okay, all right. So what's the solution for that? Or rather, I won't say solution, but what's the kind of strategy that you can take in order to address this problem? Okay, so a practical solution that people have studied, okay, and there are modifications as well. Descent. People often call it SGD in short. Okay, stochastic gradient descent. So what is stochastic gradient descent? So the stochastic gradient descent is essentially that. So let me just remind you the previous thing, that in batch gradient descent, direction of movement, okay, that means in which direction you can move so that you can get the minimum or at least the local minimum value of the function, error function. So in batch gradient descent, the direction of movement depends on all training samples, okay, in your data. That's the main thing in batch gradient descent. That's why it is called batch gradient descent. Okay. Now something like this you have seen. Okay, sum over all the samples and so on and so forth. Okay. Now basic idea behind stochastic gradient descent is that the direction of movement is approximated using only one training sample at a time. I don't want to use for every update. I don't want to use all samples to find out which direction I should move. Rather, I would basically use a single sample at a time. Okay, and that is precisely the reason I am mentioning that this is an approximated direction. You don't get exact direction as you get in batch gradient descent, but you can kind of get approximate direction if you apply this whole thing on individual samples and so on and so forth. Okay. Now a little factoid which I'd like to mention here is that if you have 10 samples in your training data, okay, now in batch gradient descent, in a single update, you can move approximately r distance, r into some gradient and so on and so forth. Okay, because you are using all samples. Now in stochastic gradient descent, if there are 10 samples and you are updating these parameters after every sample, so you can basically in a single pass you can move approximately 10 into r step. Okay, and that makes the algorithm very, very fast. Okay, but there's a problem which I will mention what is the problem and what we can do to avoid this problem, so on and so forth. So let's see this actual algorithm. Okay, so now the error function will change, because in batch gradient descent, the error function that we had, it involved all the samples. Now that we are dealing with the stochastic gradient descent with a single example, training example. So in this particular case, my error function will only involve this particular expression. The ith sample is level and the corresponding predicted value, and that's it. Okay, there is no summation involved here. Okay. Now, if you can apply this gradient again, gradient-based things on a single training sample and so on and so forth, I get something like this. There is no expression involved, no summation involved in this one. Okay. So what you do? The first step remains the same only. Okay. They randomly set the values of all these parameters, all thetas, and then you repeat until convergence. You do randomly shuffle all training data. That's the important step. You do all the time. You random shuffling and so on and so forth. Not every iteration you can take all this like in all the samples in the same sequence. You randomly shuffle the training sample. Okay, so there are, for example, n training samples. So for I up to n, okay, for each training sample, you simply compute the gradients. Okay, you apply the update rule, and you are basically done. Okay, you are basically done. So you can say this one that you are basically making in one pass, full pass over the data, you are basically making n updates. Okay, because after every sample, you are making one update. But in batch gradient descent, so after taking a full pass over all the data, you are making only one update. Okay, so that basically makes this stochastic gradient descent actually scalable on a very large volume of data, and that's the kind of default choice. Okay, there's slight variation here, and the problem here, which I will mention in the next slide, but that's the basic idea of stochastic gradient descent. All right. Now, let's talk about the problem, okay, and how we can basically do these things. So here, the problem which I'd like to mention something like this, okay, and I just take a simple analogy, okay. So, for example, you want to reach, say, for example, you got down at Kharagpur railway station, and you want to reach IIT Kharagpur campus, okay, and you do not know the path, okay, how we should reach there. So the strategy would be that you can ask a single guy in the station that in which direction I should move. Okay, he will tell one direction. So you come, and then at some point you see there are three other paths. So you do not know which path you should follow. Then you another guy there sitting there that which direction I should move so that I can reach IIT Kharagpur, and so on and so forth. So every point you see there is a branching in the road. You can ask somebody sitting there or standing there that, okay, which path I should take so that I can basically reach Kharagpur. Okay, that's the strategy that you could do. So the stochastic gradient descent is something like this. At every point, at every step, you are basically consulting one sample to figure out which direction I should move. But the danger that you can see is that if at any point of time, somebody gives you wrong information, okay, somebody gives you wrong information, for instance, okay, instead of telling that you take right, he says take left, something like that, okay, then you end up going somewhere, okay, which you don't want, okay, you again need to come back and then basically find out the way and to reach IIT Kharagpur campus and so on and so forth. Okay, so therefore consulting a single guy for decision making in order to decide the direction is a risky business. Okay, so therefore the single sample gradient descent is a bad idea. Okay, so what's the solution? Solution is basically, rather than asking a single guy, you can ask maybe a group of 5-6 guys at a time. So every point, if the moment you have to take a decision that which path I should take, you can ask 4-5 guys there, okay, and basically take some kind of average, okay, of what they are saying. If 3 people out of 5 saying that you should take left, you can take left. If 4 people out of 5 saying that you can take right, you can take right. That's it. Something like that you could do. So it just minimizes these kind of errors, okay, which is you can basically otherwise you can get simply by consulting a single sample. So that's the basic idea behind mini batch gradient descent. Okay, so let's see how it actually works. So in mini batch gradient descent, that the basic idea is that you compute gradient, unlike in the previous cases, on a batch of B training samples. Okay, batch could be like 10, 15, 100, 200, 1000, and whatever. Okay, so you, instead of consulting a single or instead of consulting all, you can basically take a batch of B training samples. You ask it which direction I should move, and you find out the direction and you simply move. That's it. That's the basic idea. Okay. So what's the algorithm then? First step remains the same as is. You randomly initialize these parameters. Then you have to set the size of this batch. Okay. every batch how many samples should be there, which you can consult. And then you repeat until convergence, the same step. You randomly shuffle the data. For every mini batch, you compute the batch index. Essentially, this is computing the gradients on that particular mini batch. Okay, it's a little bit of formula, but you can figure out this formula with pen and paper. Not a big deal. Okay, so essential idea is you take one batch, you compute the gradient, you update these parameters, then you take this next batch, you basically compute the gradient, update the parameter, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if there are, say, for example, 20 samples in your data and your batch size is 4, then after a full pass, you are making 5 updates. Okay, in one sample stochastic gradient descent, you are making 20 updates because there are 20 samples. And in batch gradient descent, you are making only one update because you are taking all the samples. Okay, so that's the major distinction between all this stuff. All right. So batch size, it depends on the data that you have, the nature of the distribution of the data, and so on and so forth. I don't want to give any concrete suggestion on this one. These are all empirical things. Okay, for some data, 32 can work. For some data, 1000 may work, and things like that. Okay, so it depends on like what you have and so on. You have to do a little bit of experimentation to figure out what should be a good batch size for your data and problem. Okay. All right. So I just want to summarize the 3 things that you talked about. Okay, the batch gradient descent, that you are computing the gradient using all training samples. In stochastic gradient descent, and which I will typically refer to as one sample gradient descent, which is basically gradient descent is computed using only one training sample at a time. Okay, and mini batch gradient descent, which also called the stochastic gradient descent, people also call it. So in mini batch gradient descent, the gradient is computed using a small batch of training samples. Okay, and that's basically the main differences between 3 things. Now, for recommendation, okay, because in any way you will be applying this stuff. Okay, when you will build your model, you will apply on some real stuff that you want to play with, and so on and so forth. So the recommendation would be you apply mini batch gradient descent. Okay. So there are other benefits as well, which I will gradually talk about when I will talk about the deep learning things, architectures, and so on and so forth. Gradually, I will tell you that. But for the moment, the recommendation is basically the mini batch gradient descent. Almost all state-of-the-art models and platforms and everything that you see, they use mini batch gradient descent. Okay. All right. Any question before I move on to the other topic? Any question up to this one from anybody?
So,
Yes, please.
so using these techniques, can we ensure that we can get the global minima, or we might face a problem by being stuck in local minima too?
You never ensure. I mean, none of this algorithms. So when you are dealing with non-convex optimization, which is basically often almost always the case in deep learning, non-convex, you can never ensure global minima. Okay, none of this method ensure that.
So,
Okay, thank you, sir.
So
Yeah.
During mini batch, what if the entire mini batch has an outliers with large loss? I mean, the update will be in wrong direction, right? What will be in that case?
That's a good question. So, and that is precisely the reason that you typically people form the batch, randomly. Okay. So if you, for example, you randomly shuffle the data and form the batches, first of all, very unlikely that you are going to get outliers in the entire batch. Maybe 1 or 2 samples, maybe outlier out of 1000, but not all. Okay. But still there is a chance, okay, that you can, in principle, you can get outliers in a particular batch. But the thing is that, so one batch can mislead you, okay, but then you have many other batches subsequently you will be applying. So even if one batch misleads you, in the next batch or the other batch can actually correct that. It can slow down the convergence a little bit, which I agree, but it cannot harm because the other batches are there. They can basically bring you to the right place.
Okay, sir. Also, we hear a lot about the vanilla gradient descent. So what is a vanilla gradient descent?
So this is the one which I mentioned, the very stuff. Like you can think about all of these stuffs is called vanilla gradient descent. like batch gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, mini batch gradient descent, they're all vanilla gradient descent because you are only using the gradient and the learning rate. The next, like the two things that I'm going to talk about today is basically non-vanilla, which you can call. Okay, it's little advanced. Okay, and so on.
Sir, in mini batch gradient descent, there can be the cases of having high bias because we are only taking a particular sample out of the samples.
Higher what? Can you repeat this?
Bias.
Higher bias. Okay, yeah.
So, sir, how can we like resolve that issue?
Yeah. So, see, the issue is that think about a data set with, say, for example, 1 lakh samples. Okay, and if you say set your batch size to 100, okay, then you are going to have how many batches? 1000, right? You have 1000 batches. So if the entire data set is biased, you can never learn anything. Okay, you don't want to apply those kind of stuff for your stuff because there's a problem with the data itself. Now, if most 70% of the data is basically is good, 30% is problematic, then because the majority of the batches are actually good, then it can basically counter all kinds of biases in this one. Of course, it can slow down the convergence for sure if you have a clean examples as compared to this one, but still it can counter all these biases. Because essentially all the gradient descent based approaches, they are kind of the majoritarian approach that they follow. Okay, they simply look at on an average that what the majority of examples is talking about.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir, the convergence point. So where do we stop? I mean, we stop at the local minima, or we continue till a particular number of local minimas?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So typically, people actually so in order to avoid local minima, many people have suggested many things. For example, you can increase the learning rate a little bit so that you can jump from there and so on and so forth. So people do try different kinds of trick in order to avoid the local minima. Okay, they sometimes work, they sometimes do not work for sure. But one suggestion could be you run multiple times, or you can run basically with multiple initial points because local minima depends on where you started. Okay, so people suggest sometimes that you basically run multiple times with multiple starting position and see the minimum value of all this out of these things and then determine.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Another question? Okay. All right. So now let's move on to another important variance of this one. This one. But let me just talk about the limitations of gradient descent. Okay. So that is critical in order to basically talk about the other things. Okay. So now again, you look at the same simple equation that we have, this only equation that we apply in deep learning. Okay, and there are a little bit of tweaks here and there. Okay, but essentially the equation remains the same. So in the vanilla, which one of the students mentioned, that the learning rate is constant. That's why it is called vanilla gradient descent. You simply apply only the gradient information here. Okay, and that's it. Okay, that's why it is called vanilla gradient descent. So learning rate is constant. Now, what are the consequences of the learning rate? If you choose it to be very small value, then what happens? If you choose it to be very large, then what happens? So what are the different consequences of setting this value R? Okay, and the consequences will actually motivate us to use a different kinds of, or I would say different kind, but it's a modification of this gradient descent, which will kind of avoid some of the problems. Okay, so let's look at the small value of R. Now, if you look at this particular curve. Okay. Now, one thing that I'd like to repeatedly tell you is that because my purpose is to kind of demonstrate the whole thing to make things understandable. So that's why I'm taking simple examples. But in deep learning, typically you have non-convex things like there could be multiple local minima and so on and so forth. But still this observations is actually valid for this kind of stuff. So I'm using this simple example, okay, to illustrate the point. So if you look at this particular curve, okay, and say you started from somewhere and the red arrow is basically showing you are basically starting from a position and then you are gradually coming down and so on and so forth. Okay, Now, if you set the value of R to be very small, then you are basically taking very small update, okay, after every iteration. Okay, so therefore, what happens is that you simply it slows down your convergence. Okay, so it takes lots of time to reach this bottom. Okay, bottom of this curve and so on. But that's it. That's the main problem with this one. And again, some people also say that because of the small thing, small R value, so you may get stuck to local minima and so on and so forth. That is still valid for other things as well, but kind of another argument. Okay, some people actually make. So they say that larger value can actually avoid this stucking to local minima and so on and so forth. But there are counter arguments as well. But the thing which is for sure is known is that it basically slows down your convergence if you set the value to be very small. Okay, and which you can see very clearly from here. You are simply taking small jump, and so you take lots of time. Okay, that's it. Now, what's the consequence for large value of R? Okay, now think about this particular curve. For example, a very steep curve or things like this. Now, if you simply set a value R to be constant and very large, then at the initial positions, it's all right. You can take big jumps. But when you are closer to the minimum value, global or local, whatever, then if you still continue to use the same large R value, then you basically take a big jump. Then you overshoot your ultimate, the desirable point that you are targeting. You go to the other end of this curve, and once you move to the other end of this curve, then you compute the derivative. Derivative is saying no, you should move to other direction. Then you basically move to other direction. Okay. Then again, your derivative is saying no, you should move to other direction, and basically you move to the other direction, and so on and so forth. So you basically keep oscillating here and there and so on. Okay. So that is one of the main problem, which is called oscillation. The another danger could be that if you set the value of R to be very big, then you can actually basically overshoot the minimum value. Basically, you land up somewhere completely is very far apart from the position, and then you basically ultimately ended up going somewhere else. Okay, so oscillation and overshoots are the two problems with the large value of R. Okay, so that's the major problem. So the solution for this one is called adaptive gradient descent. I don't think I have enough time today because it's almost 11:52, and I don't want to start a new topic today. I don't want to break in the middle. So I will stop here, and then in the next lecture on Monday, so I will start talking about the other stuff, and then the deep learning stuff I will start talking about. So if you have any question, I'm happy to answer. Okay, or else we can stop today. Okay, so thank you. Then see you on Wednesday in the lab, and the next theory class would be on Monday next week.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please.
So could you please explain once again what is overshoot? What do we mean?
Overshooting. Overshooting, right?
Yes.